On this episode,
my partners actually had to tear me loose from the proscenium and throw me on stage. I was so scared. But once I got out there, bam, I smelled the audience. I don't mean I literally did, but it was a feral thing that came because they're looking at you. They expect something. You better give them something.
from the coveted corner booth in a little bar at the center of the Coachella Valley Universe, welcome to another Big Conversation with Patrick Evans and Randy Florence, presented by the McCallum Theatre. Visit McCallumTheatre.org or reach the box office at 760-340-2787. Gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Howard. Yes, indeed, we are back here at Skip Paige's Little Bar, the center of the Coachella Valley Universe. And we want to give a shout-out to our sponsor, the McCallum Theatre. And you can go to McCallumTheatre.org to find out all the great things that are going on at the McCallum. You know, they're not quiet, Randy, during the summer. They have a great education program.
I was actually at a show recently during the summer.
You took your two granddaughters who are very theater involved.
Yes.
And they got to see the full behind-the-scenes...
I got to tell you the greatest thing. We were on the stage and the house lights were off. So it was dark, but they could feel how big the place was. My granddaughters are 12.
Yeah.
And the guy who was leading the tour for us said, "Nah, give me a minute." And he went and he turned on the house lights.
Oh, boy.
And when those house lights came on, you heard both my granddaughters just go, just this gasp.
Oh,
and
boy.
I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it right now. It was a pretty cool experience.
Yes.
Well, we're very appreciative of the McCallum Theatre. That was the voice of Randy, my trusty co-host.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
part
Patrick
of this.
Evans. You are part of this. This week, you're part of this. No.
Gosh, I'm interviewing for my job again.
I got something to say about the McCallum Theatre.
Yes.
That is the voice of our guest, Mr. Laurence Luckinbill.
Yeah.
And we're going to be
pushing
chatting
in.
Yeah, just butting right in. No, what do you have to say about the McCallum?
Well, I did my Teddy Roosevelt show there, my one-man show.
Yeah.
And I wasn't aware. I'd seen it from the audience side quite a few times. But when I got on that stage, and every stage I've ever been on in my life has given me goosebumps. And there's some great things with that. But when I walked out as Teddy in the lights with that audience in there, I was so at home suddenly that it was like a wondrous experience.
Wow.
I've never forgotten it, and I never will. Yeah.
Talking about our sponsor. That's pretty cool.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
always good to have a guest who has experience with our sponsor. Larry, you just published your autobiography.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Affective Memories. It's how chance and the theater saved my life.
Yes.
And you were on Eye in the Desert earlier today. We had a little chance to talk about it. Today we get to have a longer conversation.
Yeah.
And I said on Eye, I really loved the way you set this book up. Instead of chapters, you have scenes.
Yes.
And so you've written the book as you've lived your life, doing scenes.
Doing scenes, and it's written like a movie and a play.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's beautifully structured. I have not had time. I've been kind of jumping through various scenes,
Yes.
trying to catch up. But one of the things that really struck me was the absolute honesty that you wrote into this book.
You know, Pat, when you start out with this, I started 10 years ago because my daughter, I was telling stories to my children, and my daughter was the only one that kept saying, "Daddy, what's next? Tell me more, tell me more." So I decided I had to write something because she also said, "We know a lot about Mommy's folks, but nothing about you." So I started on that level, and as I began to dig into it, I realized that my life was something that if I wasn't totally honest about, there was no point to write it. So I've told on myself. And Mommy, I did this, you know.
Were there things in there that you were a little nervous about letting out in public?
Yes, there were. And there were probably some things that everybody would find interesting in every walk of life, because my life was like that. It was a dysfunctional family. I had to overcome that and all of that stuff. But But we have a great friend who read this book, and he said, he came back to my wife Lucie, and he said, "Oh my God, there were some things in that book that I just couldn't. I didn't know what to think."
Wow.
And she said, "Well, what was it?" And he said, "He voted for George Bush."
Out of the entire book, that was it.
That's right. And well, that's what I call telling on myself, because at the time, I've never been a Republican. I was always a Democrat. I grew up in Arkansas, in the blue collar place, very poverty stuff, but I believed that we could go into Iraq and make democracy work, because that was the pitch. And that always gets me, because I believe so much in democracy. And all 4 of the one-man shows that I made and did for 35 years are all about social justice and the men that made it happen in our country over the 20th century.
Teddy Roosevelt,
Ernest Hemingway,
LBJ,
Clarence Darrow, and Lyndon Johnson started it.
I love the piece in the book where you went to speak to a theater class, and you stood there, and the class was looking at you looking at them, and then you simply launched into the monologue of Clarence Darrow from your show. It
was the the attempt by Darrow to get clemency for Leopold and Loeb, the thrill killers in 1925, who had believed the words of Nietzsche and used their superpowers to kill a random child from a school that they passed by in their car. And so this was an intense 12-hour speech that he gave in Chicago. And at the end, the newspapers reported that his voice was indistinguishable from the silence in the room. And it was a hearing about clemency, and they got clemency. And within a year, one of the men was murdered in a homosexual murder in Joliet, in the Illinois State thing. And the other man survived, rehabilitated himself, built an educational system for the Illinois prisons, and was a complete success.
Wow.
Yeah, so rehabilitation.
I did not know that part of that story.
Yes.
But I loved how you captured the student's attention. You didn't start with his speech. You just launched right into that monologue, and suddenly they were mesmerized.
They were caught by because of Darrow's magnificent oratory. And at the end, I asked everyone who had been raised in a dysfunctional family to raise their hand, and about 3 people did, and they started to look around and smirk and laugh, and then I said, "And the rest of you are liars." and every hand in the house went up, and I looked at these faces, and I realized what they needed. They needed to be fed, enlightened, loved, seen, and the answer to why people go into the theater and act is escape. We need to escape. There's a certain group of people that feel so deeply that they can't live with their circumstances, and they must escape. And if they escape into drugs or something like that, that's the worst. But if you escape into the theater, it's a safe place. It is a safe place to be as insane as you want to be as happy as you want to be.
So you talked about a dysfunctional family in Arkansas as you grew up.
Yeah.
What started to pull you out of that and take you the direction that you've gone? How did you become the man that you've become out of those circumstances?
Failure, a lot of failure. See, my mother saw me as Dr. Luckinbill will see you now, and I wasn't interested in the theater at all. I didn't know anything about it because I had never seen any. I saw some movies, of course, and that started to interest me, but I didn't know why. And I certainly had no desire to be an actor. But a couple of things happened. First, I failed every course in pre-med twice. Two D minuses, 2 Fs, And it was pretty clear that I wasn't going to be a doctor.
And there's patients everywhere. Very thankful for that.
I think I deserved a Nobel Prize for not killing so many people. But anyway, the professor who flunked me, and I went running to him, blubbering like Oliver Twist. No, please help me. And he said, you don't know, but I've got eyes in the back of my head. I know about your beautiful imitation of me. And he said, it's fine. And then he said, I'm going to tell you something you don't want to hear. You don't belong in the sciences. You belong in the performing arts. And my heart sank, because I had to go home and tell my mother that.
Oh, man.
And my mother was in California. We were Archies that had moved to California at that. And I was still in Arkansas, at the University of Arkansas, which is a great university. So I went back, told my mother. She took me straight to an aptitude test and decided, this will tell you what you really... And the guy in the aptitude test said, well, you failed all of this aptitude test. I think you have the most interesting, or perhaps the worst taste I've ever seen. So I have to say that you belong in the performing arts. So my mother was dumped twice. On the way back in the bus, I noticed that her hands were white-knuckling on her rosary. She was praying for me. I said, Mom, don't worry. And she looked at me, and she said, and this is part of the title of the book, Larry, you have just got to have a chance in life.
Yeah.
And that was, I can hardly say that without crying.
Yeah. So what then was your next step to head toward obviously your mother was disappointed, but kind of at this point understood.
Yes. Yeah. I signed up, went back to the University of Arkansas, signed up as a junior for every single arts and science course, speech and drama. And I was the man on call. I would do anything to get a part, to get a piece of paper to read, to learn a part. And, of course,
with no theater background prior to this, you just jumped in with both feet and said, this is my calling.
Exactly.
Well, he took an aptitude test.
And
pretty clearly.
Yes, right, yeah. And I failed that, too. But anyway, then there was one more complete fantastic thing that happened. When I was in junior college, just before I went to university, the teachers said, we're going to a lecture. And, of course, everybody, class of 30 or something, said, oh, yeah, well, that's for lecture. Mm-hmm. But we 6 of us piled into a professor's car, and we drove to this place, which was a 1930s auditorium, quite beautiful, in the middle of Arkansas. And there was no one on stage. There was just a podium. And out walked this man with a mane of white hair and a gorgeous suit on. I noticed the suit. It was so beautiful. And I'd never noticed stuff like that. He came in, he had an armload of books. He dropped them on the podium, bang! And then he opened the first book, snap! And everybody looked up, and he started reading. In the beginning was, God. And he got my attention. And then he said poetry from all American poetry and dramas and British and all the rest of it. And then he walked out and disappeared. And I was in absolute shock because the man had pulled me in, given me light, given me a reason to live. Because if you could do that with a book and nothing else, you could bring people that kind of soul and heart and beauty.
You understood the power right away.
I did, and we got back in the car, and the professors were chatting away like it was just an ordinary thing. And my buddies that I was sitting in the back seat with, none of them were very interested at all. But I was sitting there crunched up, like, what am I going to do with my life? My God, this is fantastic. The power of it, you know. And for a powerless kid who was never enough, here I am seeking some sort of safe power. And that's what the theater is. It's safe power.
And so, what was your next step after college?
I went to work in a cannery.
That's right.
Took an aptitude test, ended up in a cannery.
That's right. I did. I got a job. I was lucky to get a job in a cannery. I was very lucky they took me off the hot can line the first day because I was pretty incompetent.
That doesn't sound like something you'd want to be doing if you were incompetent.
No. But the manager came down and actually gave me a job driving a jitney. And now here I am, Larry Luckinbill bootlegger, driving around this big, huge warehouse, at speed, sticking the forks under platters of hot cans, stacking them up, zoom, zoom, zoom. I loved that job. And after the first 2 weeks, I was walking out with my pay packet in my hand, and it was heavy. And I didn't dare look in it because I didn't know what was in it. But suddenly it was snatched out of my hands. There was an arm at my throat and a knee at my crotch, and two guys took away my money. And I said, "What's going on?" They said, "That's all right. It's just union dues. We're taking you."
No.
Yeah, you're going to be a Teamster now because you're a driver. And,
wow.
And I said, "Well, do you do this every week?" They said, "No, just this. We're taking the dues, okay? So calm down, cool down." And I said, "Well, okay, it's all right with me. I'm a Teamster now." They said, "Yeah." I said, "Are there any meetings?" They looked at me and said, all they did was shake their heads. "No, pal, you don't go to the meetings."
Just when we show up once a month, that'll be the only meeting.
That's right. Yeah, so I got to be a Teamster. That was my first union.
Have you kept your dues current?
Oh, God. No, but recently, SAG-AFTRA took my dues away, and I'm almost 90 years old. So what do they want?
Wow. All right. So, what was your first acting job?
It was in the University of Arkansas. I was Mercutio in Romeo and Juliet, and I was so scared that my buddies, my partners, Romeo and Benvolio, we were about to go on stage, and Mercutio has got a big sword fight, and he dies pretty early.
"'Tis not so wide as a church door, nor deep as a well."
Oh my God! Yes, you know the lines.
I do.
Yeah. Anyway, I was looking forward to that, but not to the acting part. and my partners actually had to tear me loose from the proscenium and throw me on stage. I was so scared. But once I got out there, bam, I smelled the audience. I don't mean I literally did, but there was a feral thing that came because they're looking at you. They expect something. You better give them something. So I did. And I went so fast, I doubt that they understood one word that I said, but I got off the stage, and I was in a I can't even explain it, ecstasy, and I couldn't wait to get back on stage.
Wow.
So that was the first.
So how did you get out of the cannery and back on stage? What happened after the cannery?
I went to the Army.
But still not acting.
Oh, well, I don't know.
You went into character, I bet.
Well, I was an ROTC officer, training, and of course, you think you can act that, but you can't, because I was going to be in charge of about 60 men, and it was the end of the Korean War, but we were still under DMZ, and there were a lot of us being shipped over. I was not, because at that time the U.S. government decided to do a RIF, reduction in force of the Army, so they dumped a bunch of us out. And but anyway, when I got into the Army under those circumstances, I realized the first thing I had to do personally, I'm an acrophobe and a claustrophobe. I had to climb, as a camo officer, I had to climb telephone poles and pine trees up to the top with those belts and the stickers.
Oh yeah.
And I conquered some fear there because I didn't think I'd be good at that, but I had to be because, and you get the sense immediately that what if you're in the DMZ and somebody says they're coming for you, you got to retreat to this hill and hold it, you 60 guys or you 20 guys or whoever's left or whoever's there, and it's all on you. And I knew that as an officer, I tell you, I said, I can do this. I will do this. And that start making yourself into a man.
And did you find yourself being able to start to lead other people at that time?
Yeah, but I was a terrible leader.
There's so many aptitudes.
I find that hard to believe because
no, I'm not a follower.
You're certainly not a follower.
And I'm not a leader. But I'll tell you something. I volunteered to take the 3rd Army, Fort McClellan, Alabama group to the Olympic trials in 1956 with a team that I coached. And we went to Fort Benning, and we were absolutely hopelessly outmatched. They all had matching bathing suits. We didn't have anything.
You weren't wearing suits?
We were wearing suits, but they were like boxer shorts and all that.
I got it.
And nobody. Yes, that's right. Nobody, and we didn't have goggles, and we didn't have those little funny turns that they do now. You know, we just touched the thing and came back. Anyway, I noticed I volunteered for the 1,500 meter.
Medley or individual?
No, the individual
Holy
swim.
moly. That's a lot of swimming.
I know, but nobody else would take it. So I volunteered, and I was very strong and at that time. So I'm there, we're on set, and I failed to hear the gun, and I went out, and I was the only one in the pool. So I came back, you know how they rerun film? I came back like that, I'm standing on the thing. At the other end of the list of people, of the bunch who was swimming, was Ford Kono, who was the gold medal winner from the previous 4 years.
Yeah.
And I was a Japanese man, I believe. I'm not sure, but anyway, I was determined, I'm going to beat this guy. So second bang, I go out late. Everybody's in the water.
You're still in the boat.
I go out fast as I can go, and I'm messing up your sound here.
That's all right.
Anyway, I banged my way to the back, to the next wall, and back, and back, and back, and back, and back, and back, and back. 5 laps, and now they're all going the wrong way, and I'm going the right way, and I'm winning. I was ahead, and I stood up in the water and threw up my breakfast.
Oh!
Which was a good Southern breakfast.
Biscuits and gravy.
It was biscuits and gravy,
Grits, bacon,
thick cut bacon, scrambled eggs, everything you can think of. And I noticed one of the swimmers saw a piece of tomato float past him. I believe they were a little nervous about that, but it was a very big pool, so I think it turned to fish flakes. But I finished. Here's the deal. I finished the swim. I was about 4 minutes behind Kono, which for a first shot was not terrible. And I heard one person doing this, clapping. And I looked up, and it was the major who was in charge of running this trial. And I looked up at him, and he just gave me a thumbs up. Because why? Because I finished.
Finished, yeah.
I didn't quit.
Yep.
So gradually, I'm trying to make myself into a man that I can respect.
Well, I think if you'd thrown up earlier in the race, other people would have gotten out of the pool and you had a shot at winning.
Well, this is true. This is true.
We'll see if it's a strategy used in the Olympics later this month.
Or if I had eaten other things.
Other things.
Yeah, snails, maybe.
That's actually a pretty big meal to eat just before you go for a 15.
Yes.
Because you can't go back in the pool for an hour, right?
I'm also very dumb.
That is not true at all. We're going to continue our conversation with Larry Luckinbill in just a moment, but we want to take a time out briefly to thank our presenting sponsor, the McCallum Theatre, the very center. If Little Bar is not the center of the Coachella Valley Universe, the McCallum Theatre is. And here's a word from them.
The McCallum Theatre's 2024-2025 season is on sale now. The world's top artists, from jazz, pop, classical, and comedy to the best of Broadway, only at the Valley's favorite place for great entertainment. Tickets are on sale now at the McCallum Theatre box office, by phone, or online at McCallumTheatre.org. Tickets sell quickly, so order yours today. A new, exciting season only at the McCallum. The McCallum Theatre's 2024-2025 season is on sale now.
Once again, our thanks to the McCallum Theatre for being our presenting sponsor, and it is so wonderful to have Larry Luckinbill here. This gentleman is such an amazing guy, and we're going to continue our conversation.
So how did all of this, the Army, the dysfunctional family, it started to inform, you're working hard on becoming the kind of man that you wanted to be. Yeah. How did this inform the type of performer you became?
Very interesting. First of all, I didn't know what to think of or do with my father because he was an alcoholic. And
when you refer to the dysfunction, is that usually what you're talking about?
That is what I'm talking about. My mother was codependent on this, and I was subject to that between them. And that bothered me a lot. I didn't want to be like that in that situation. And I also felt like I wasn't enough. So I could never have solved the situation. But I conceived this dislike or hatred for my father. It wasn't as strong as hatred. It's just I never understood him. I even respected the man because he kept trying to stop drinking. And we were Catholics, so we would go to church and pray, and God was listening, I'm sure, and saying, okay, well, it's your problem, fix it. And we kept trying to fix it, and it would never fix. But as I tried to deal with my difficult problem with my father, I found out that those emotions were so ripping me. I wanted to commit suicide once because I thought I wasn't enough. I would never be enough, blah, blah, blah. So it's all in the book, but it's the prospect of getting my first big role in college was as Biff Loman in Death of a Salesman.
Death of a Salesman, yeah.
The son who is having a terrible problem with his father. And so how did I handle it? I went to my own father as an affective memory of what he did to me, and I tried to put it into Willie Loman. And as the analog, it works. But as using your own emotions in that undisciplined way tied me in knots, and I was so scared and so miserable that I couldn't do anything about fixing my own father in a play which is not about fixing my father, but
not at all.
but about the characters.
Right.
So you have to learn those things, and I did. I was very, very lucky because the guy playing Willie was a good method actor from New York City, I first heard about him when he was in a play with Marlon Brando, who was about 20 years old.
Wow.
And so it was good work. It was good stuff. He showed me stuff. And I was always sad afterwards because he never told me what he thought of my performance.
Now, you told me you did over 200 plays.
Yeah.
And I want to talk a little bit about Boys in the Band.
Okay.
Because it was such an incredible piece of work.
Yes.
And it remains it's controversial even kind of to this day.
Yes, it is. It is. It was the.
We have a mutual friend, Terry. Didn't they the Bent Theater? Terry Ray.
Yeah. Yes.
One of the first. They do the Bent Theater here in Palm Springs, and it's an LGBTQ theater. And one of the first productions they did was The Boys in the Band.
Yeah. Yes.
And
I may have seen that.
It's a remarkable piece of work, but it really had an impact on you.
It did. It was 3 years of my life, and I was one of two straight guys playing a gay man. Assuming the position, I called it. And,
Terry would love that. Terry would really love that.
Yeah, probably. But I'll tell you something. I received a letter today. Somebody who read the book, a lady who said she couldn't put it down. It kept her up 3 nights. She's finished with the book. She said it's affected her deeply. But of course, here in Palm Springs, I don't go through a day without meeting somebody who says something in that place saved my life. Something in that place saved my life.
Well, it was, I think, really one of the very first times in modern pop culture that we got to look into what gay life was actually like.
It was the real first time, actual reality of it, and it's a very well made play. It's very funny. It's also sadly bitter. And I played the married guy who had discovered he was gay and who got a divorce from his wife and children to go with this young man that he met and is having a fight with because the young man wants a menage and he is not that kind of a guy. And most of the people who talk to me say that they think when they were trying to come out and they were scared, come out of the closet, that the character I played was the guy that they wanted to be like. Because I was straight, I told the truth, even though I was gay. And so there were so many very moving things that occurred during that play. I came out one night, there was a guy, a heavy-set guy. His wife is yelling for him to get a cab. He's holding on to the bars of the steps outside the theater, and he's moaning. And I said, "Sir, what's the matter? Can I help you?" He didn't recognize me. I was in my motorcycle togs and all that. Anyway, he looked up, and he said, "Those boys, what's going to happen to those boys?" And he almost collapsed, and he was a big, heavy guy. I had to help him. He got in the cab and went away. And I thought, what am I ever worried about being an actor? This is what you can do as an actor. You can bring people that close to understanding their own family, you know?
Yeah.
And their own sadnesses and their own misery. And my father and mother came to see the play, and boy, was I scared that night.
I bet.
And afterwards, we're walking up the street, not a word. You know how that feels. You know,
You're waiting for something. Yeah. There's got to be something.
Little buddy walking with daddy and mommy, and not a word about what you did. Finally, I stopped. I said, "How'd you like to play?" My mother, of course, said, "I thought you took your part very well." I looked at my dad, and my dad is standing straight up like an Indian, like he always did. He's got his hat on straight, and that's always a bad sign. And he's looking up the block. He is not looking at me. He said, "Well, I'll tell you, I had a friend once." He said, "I was working at the American Express Company taking coffins off the freight cars. And this fellow worked at the bank, and I was a little bit jealous about that because he always got to wear a clean shirt. And he was my friend, and he would ask me to walk with him on the river, on the Arkansas River, on Sundays. And I did. We walk. And one day he gave me a book of poems. And I looked at it, and I thought, well, this fella maybe is a homosexual. He pronounced it the Arkansas way. And I said, well, what about that? He said, well, he was my best friend. And I said, so it didn't end your friendship? He said, no, he was my best friend.
Wow.
So that was my daddy. I learned to respect things gradually, piece by piece, of my father. Today, if they were here, I'd hug them for a year and a half, both of them. They worked so hard for us. There were 4 of us, and they're all gone. I'm the only one left, and I'm the only one left in the Boys in the Band cast as well. And so I'm the last man standing. Yeah.
There was a story related about that, and I will just be. I'm skimming through the book because I got it. And But there was, and you kissed a guy.
I what?
You kissed a man. You were talking about kissing a guy in the book.
Oh yes. Oh. Yes.
Walk me through you sort of kind of went through this whole thing like. It was, and this was at the time you were doing Boys in the Band, like
I was,
and you were questioning. I
was messed up because I'll tell you why I was messed up. Tullamore Dew,
a little Irish whiskey will get you.
Irish whiskey. I was getting to the point. I was so lonely in London, and so screwed up, and I started drinking a lot, and. I have Richard's cork leg. I can drink anybody under any table, but why do that? And
you proved it.
I've proved it. But I was doing a lot of drinking, and one night I just decided to try it with this young waiter at one of the restaurants, and we went to his house, and yes, it's a scene. In which I not only kiss him, but do the next step. And it was...
And you phrased it exactly that way in the book. It was very delicately phrased. But...
I went to a psychiatrist afterwards.
Yes, you said that because you were... But you said something very interesting, which... it sort of affirmed that you really... loved interactions with women.
Oh, yes.
You said
yes.
you very clearly defined the difference between love and lust.
Yes.
And I think one of the most clear definitions I've ever seen.
Love gives, lust takes. And a lot of the homosexual exchanges are lust because they go out night after night and they search out sex. And that's what the closet does. People were locked in the closet because they wanted to survive, because you could get killed if you were gay, and certainly in Arkansas.
Mm-hmm. In a lot of places.
In a lot of places. New York, too. But the play was so frank and honest that it turned the key and turned on the motor for the gay revolution.
Yeah.
And... because people could not believe what they were seeing. And the next year at Stonewall, there was a reaction to the cops who were really ragging on the gay guys all the time. And so it was a very controversial time. And
how did that role come about for you? How did you get that role in Boys in the Band?
Good question. I'm from Arkansas. The playwright was from Mississippi. You don't say Mississippi. You say Mississippi.
Mississippi.
Yeah, and never mind. We're going down to linguistics here. But I met him at Catholic University of America, where I was a graduate student after the Army, and he was an undergraduate. And I noticed this kid because he was a kid who would do a lab show as a director, and he would be so meticulous to take the crappy pieces of old furniture and stuff and make something beautiful out of it. I said, this guy's an interesting guy. And so we made acquaintance. 11 years later actually, he showed up in New York with a play pressed to his breast like a baby, and he said, "Would you read this play? Because nobody else will." And he was talking about gay actors, gay directors, gay producers, straight actors, straight people in the theater business did not want to know anything about that frank about gay life. I said, "Mart, I'll do it." And then I was married at that time. I went home to tell my wife, and she was a New Yorker, and she understood these things. There was no problem for her. And then I told my agent, who also represented the play. And she said, "Well, okay, fine, but you just wrecked your career." So, you know what? I'm an anti-authority person from the way back, and I ain't going to take that from nobody.
I think you did okay, Larry.
It was the right decision.
It was the right decision.
It was, and it was 3 years, and it was a movie.
Right.
The movie is a cult movie.
And the entire cast did the film, correct?
Yes, and this is how tough Mart Crowley, the author, was. He got a call from Hollywood, I'm not going to say who, offering him $250,000 for the rights, and this is in 1968. A lot of money.
Yeah.
If he would fire all of the faggots in the play and hire Hollywood actors. And so we had a good time with that because it's a little bit strange to say that there's nobody in Hollywood that's gay.
Right, yeah.
Or that there's no closet in Hollywood. They're just Hollywood closets.
I want to jump ahead to when you met Lucie.
Yeah.
Because
Lucie who?
Your lovely wife, Lucie Arnaz.
By the way,
who,
I've
like
been
my wife, is an
sitting next to
immaculate
her.
heart graduate.
My wife is the most beautiful woman in the world.
She is stunning.
She is.
I've been
How did
sitting
you
next
guys
to her
meet?
all day. This is incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah. She is so... She's my partner. How did I meet her?
Yes.
I was doing Chapter 2 with Neil Simon play on Broadway. She was doing there playing a song, a Neil Simon musical on Broadway. And my wife was working with me in Chapter 2 quit because we were getting a divorce. And they put in a new lady, and the lady was very nervous about working for Neil because Neil could fire you at a moment's notice. Anyway, she said, "Would you please coach me a little bit?" Well, that was very tricky. You don't do that. But I said, anti-authority again. I'll do it. Yeah, so I showed up at a restaurant called Joe Allen's in New York. And this lady was talking to this girl who was sitting there with the frizzy hair and straight as a dancer. And my friend said, "Larry Luckinbill, this is Lucie Arnaz." And I fell in love right there.
And did Lucie?
No.
Took a little trying on your part.
So yeah, no. I saw something in this young woman. She was 28. I was 45. Huge difference. But I saw something in her that made her real to me. She was not like other ladies. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I spend a lot of my time objectivizing women, being objective about them. They have a soul function for certain men, and it's not a good way to live. It's not a good way to treat anybody. But I was in sort of a habit of doing that. But I realized with this young lady that there was something much, much deeper there, and I never could treat her with objectivity because she was so straight, so honest in her own life, and she was searching as well. And the two of us were searching for...
The universe brought you together.
The universe did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Elon Musk had nothing to do with it.
We've given Lucie a mic, so he said he was in love right away. How long did it take you?
I was too, but I had just been really badly burned with a rebound relationship. A guy who had, just left his wife, just like I knew Larry had. And those guys, no matter how gorgeous they are, no matter how smart and funny they are, they just want somebody to tell them they're wonderful again, because they feel like crap. And I thought he was so smart, so funny, and I was very attracted to him. But for the first time, probably in my whole life, I do a little put the cross sign up now, like, no. And I just backed off. And I thought I could be his friend. And I invited him to our little matinee idols, a thing we did every Saturday in between show, IDLES, idols. The guys, in between shows on a Saturday if you're alone. Yeah. And you go with other people from other shows, and we called ourselves the Matinee Idols. I said, you should join us sometime. And so he did for quite a while. And I dated a couple other people. He dated several other people, and it took a few months before we really allowed ourselves to have a real date.
About 2.
It was about, I guess we met September 10th we met, and I think we had our first real, you invited me out, like on the 22nd of November. We went to Ted Hook's backstage together.
I love that you know the dates.
I do, of course. I was always about writing on my calendar.
Are you going to tell the Ted Hook story?
Let's hear the Ted Hook story.
No, it's just that night that, we've been friends now for a while, but it's just the two of us, and it's after the show, and we're having a drink, and I figured time's up, like we could actually talk to each other in a different way now. Maybe it's safe. And he said, I don't really didn't hear from you. I was surprised to hear from you tonight, and I sort of thought that I wasn't your type, he said to me. And I said, oh my God, because I was thinking that I really wasn't your type. And he said, no, gosh, no. And he said, well, what is your type? And I said, I'm just tired of the Twinkies, these guys who they just want to have a good time, and then we have to go out to whatever, and they say, I'll call you in the morning, call you tomorrow. And you're so excited, that's thrilling, and they don't. And I thought, why do guys say that? Why do they say, I'll call you tomorrow, and then they don't? And I said, I'm just tired of that. And he said...
And I said, okay,
No, you said you want to be courted.
You want to be courted.
Yes, and I went, oh, yes. Oh, my God.
And you didn't realize it till he said it.
No.
Yeah.
And then, wait, before you say that, so then the next day, I go into my dresser on Broadway, the girls who dress you backstage, and they know everything about your life. And her name was Kate. And I said, Kate, oh, my God, I went out with Larry Luckinbill. And you can't believe it. And he's so fabulous. He's shaggy. And he did not call. He said he was going to call, and he didn't call. So, like, here I am at my show.
Didn't call.
And I had already told him that story, and I was like, God damn, son of a bitch. And I said, never, listen to me, never, ever, ever tell a guy how you really feel about anything. He will use it against you. And right at that moment, knock, knock, knock at my dressing room door, and she opens the door, and there is a huge basket of flowers, larger than anything I'd ever received in my life, with streamers of ribbons hanging down. It smelled like Hawaii. Oh. And I go, who the hell is this? And I open the card, and it says...
Courting.
Well done, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well done.
I was
now,
cooked.
Patrick, you and I are screwed. There's no way we can top this.
So I was
Thankfully,
cooked.
our wives don't listen to this, so they won't know.
They'll never know this. What I love about the story in the book, though, was that you were, I don't know if nervous is the right word, but Lucie's mom could be a little intimidating.
Yes.
And you were concerned because of the age difference, and you had 2 children.
Yes, I did. And that was a big deal. And so I decided to cook for her, Lucie. When they came to visit New York. It's a long story. I probably shouldn't
read it in
tell
the book.
Oh,
That's
no,
like
read the
best,
book. Yeah,
best story in the whole book.
I cooked dinner for Lucille Ball, and she didn't eat it. So
that was the original title for the book. No, I'm just kidding.
I cooked dinner for Lucille Ball.
And she didn't eat it.
I would have bought that.
Wait, she didn't eat your dinner?
No, we went to 21.
He set the apartment on fire.
I set the apartment on fire.
Read, it's a long story.
I've got to get to that part of the book. I got to the part where he was nervous about meeting your mom because...
Yeah.
But obviously, eventually, you all overcame that.
Yeah, well, no. Not really. Not really.
I married him anyway.
Did she ever eat anything you cooked?
No.
No, but I will say this: I have and had the greatest respect for this woman who made herself just as I was trying to make myself.
Yeah.
True.
She came from nowhere in upstate New York and became what she became.
Yeah.
And she did it on that little spirit of that little girl who was always getting in trouble. And the truthful thing about that relationship is they could have unconditional love on television, but it escaped them in real life.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I want to congratulate you. We're 45 minutes in,
And I
or
haven't
so,
brought it up, but
and
I'm
you
about to bring
haven't
it up.
brought it up.
No.
Go ahead.
And it's happening right now. Because all of it, actually, and I found out something. So you have more than just a passing connection with Star Trek.
yes,
You were the star of Star Trek V as the villain
yes.
in the only Star Trek film directed by William Shatner.
Yes.
So not only worked with Bill as a co-star, but he was your director for this film.
Can you feel Patrick's excitement building as he's asking these questions?
We've done this before, Larry. We've gone through our Trekkie thing together.
Yeah.
But also, though, and you mentioned this in the book, your mother-in-law helped fight to create Star Trek.
Yes.
She preserved it. She
did.
I had no idea.
You didn't know this?
No.
She was
And I
the
was
head
an
of
original
Digital
Star Trek
Studios.
fan.
Yes.
And she fought for the second pilot.
The second pilot, which was the first one was turned down or it didn't work, and they came to Desilu for the next pilot and CBS, and Roddenberry pitched it incredibly, and Lucie was by then in charge of the studio. Desi had left, and it fell to her to make the final decision. However, she got some assistance from her husband, Gary Morton, who liked that kind of show. But Lucie thought it was some sort of a star tour to sell war bonds or something, Star Trek. But it was, she didn't quite understand what it was. But on the other hand, once the thing started rolling, she supported it and made it happen. And you have to admire that kind of balls.
That's true. But no, without Lucille Ball, there would be no Star Trek. There would be. It wouldn't happen.
Lucille
And
Balls.
Then flash forward many years after the series had been canceled, and now they're well into the series of films, and you are cast as Spock's half-brother, Sybok.
Yes.
And you walked into Harve Bennett, who was producing the film, and Shatner, who was directing, and you thought you were going to an audition, but it wasn't really an audition, was it?
No, it wasn't, because there's something about Hollywood when a golf cart comes to pick you up at the gate, and that they tell you, "We'll park your car for you, sir," and you never get that. You get, "Oh, put your car within the lot, take a walk." Anyway, I rode the cart, get to the bungalow where all these guys are going to be meeting me, and I've been to many of these things, and there's a lot of them. It's just it's a meetup. Oh, he's not tall enough. He's too tall. He's not. Thanks a lot. That's how you're treated. And usually there are 5 or 6 other actors there, sometimes 30, waiting to get on the list to read a piece of crap, and so the door opens and I walk in, and everybody in the room stands up and comes to shake my hand. Wow, omens? I didn't think that way. I just thought, God, what do they want? So then Bill went into a pitch. He said, "I saw you play Lyndon in some hotel somewhere where I was just I didn't have anything to do, so I watched you." And he said, "And I want you to do Sybok." And Harve Bennett, the producer, said, "Well, Larry, we'd like to give you a script and see if you'd like to read it and take." And Bill said, "No, I really want Larry."
Wow.
So it was a back and forth between these two guys. They were very jovial and all of that. I went home with a script. I read it that night, and I said, I'm in. In the morning, I called at 8 o'clock, and I knew nothing really about Star Trek at that time, just like I knew nothing about I Love Lucy when I met my wife. I was not a TV guy, really. I was a theater guy. But when I got the part, it grew on me and deepened me. And you know why? Because I have been in this long, long search for God myself. I'm not going to shy away from that. I've always wanted to know what's out there. I've always wanted to know how best I could work in this world to be who I should be. And Sybok was doing the same thing. He was since he was part human, and I took that as a really good sign. You know, he worked on what we work on, which is our moment-to-moment emotion, our moment-to-moment feelings about what we ought to do. And when Bill asked me who my image was for Sybok, I said Lennon, and he said, John? I said, no, Vladimir Ilyich.
And what was Bill's response? It was a great response.
We're not doing a movie about commies here.
I love that.
But he accepted that. And there were so many funny things that happened in that movie, man. Anyway.
You layered that by saying, here was a guy who you felt like Lennon started the revolution with this pure desire.
Yes.
But at the end of it,
there was a purity about it.
He had driven himself mad.
Yes. They started with the idea of freeing the serfs, who were the slaves of Russia under the Tsar. And by the time they realized the obstacles to organizing a place like Russia, which is as chaotic perhaps as Trump's brain.
Well, let's not go crazy.
Let's not go. Please no. Anyway, by the time they got to those obstacles, they realized we have to put control over these people. So let's control these serfs again. So that's where they are right now. And Lennon became a monster. And really, in the movie, Sybok does not become a monster.
No.
He sacrifices himself.
He does.
For the community.
You played him with, I thought, great dexterity and sensitivity. He could have been a cardboard character, but he was not. And the whole gist of the film, by the way, for Randy, who I know hasn't seen it.
What, was Chewbacca in it?
Stop it. Sybok is Spock's half-brother.
Right.
And he's a heretical Vulcan who is on this mad quest to find God, who may live at a planet at the center of the galaxy, and he hijacks the Enterprise and kidnaps Captain Kirk to get there. But on the way, he leads essentially a cult, and he takes away your pain.
Yes.
And I thought that was, after reading portions of this book, I thought, here's a guy who spent some of his life looking for someone to take away his pain.
Wow. Patrick. That is the dead-on truth.
Yeah.
That's used to, thank you. I'm using that. I'm stealing that.
In the next book.
Yeah.
Where my pain came from.
That's right.
It was a very
it's true. It's true because I spent an awful lot of time in trying to work through pain. And I did treat Sybok's change like that, and it's a great opening. I walk up to this guy on this alien planet. He's trying to shoot me with a rock gun, and I just put my hand on his forehead and say, "Let me take your pain." Wow. And he falls down and kneels and all that stuff. And a lot of, you could make so many references about that, but I did it like it was a good thing. It was never a bad thing. My exchange with DeForest Kelley.
You two hit it off. You're both Southerners.
We did. We're both Southern boys. DeForest was ill. He wasn't doing so well.
He passed not too long after that film was made.
That's right.
He lived to make one more Star Trek film.
He did, and he was. You know what? He was a mensch. Yeah, he's a mensch. He was a Hollywood mensch. He came there from the war and was trained into becoming an actor. Usually, they put you on a horse the first thing and put a hat on you.
And he did a bunch of westerns.
Yes, I hate horses. I like big hats, though.
I like big hats.
I'm all hat, no cattle, as they say in Texas.
But yeah, you seem to have a great relationship with him.
I did.
All of the cast.
I did, and with Takai, George has a really funny laugh, and I would be choking him up backstage, and Bill's trying to do a scene, and he threatened to throw us off the set many times, but it worked out, and I like Bill an awful lot, and I respect him, and he had a hard time with that. They took away some of his post time in the studio with Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Yeah, because they stuck that in there.
Right. The film didn't end up being the film that he envisioned, but it's still a great.
And it takes a lot. It takes a lot of sort of nasty hits, mostly at Bill. I think it's extremely unfair.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate, but I think there's some really tremendous, great moments of great heart.
Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. And merrily, 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 life is but a dream.
Well, Patrick, are you happy?
I'm ecstatic. But what made me even happier was, and you said in the book, you made 40 movies plus, right?
Yeah.
You said the only two that you can actually watch, that you enjoy watching, Boys in the Band and Star Trek V, because you felt like you nailed those characters.
I nailed those characters, yeah. And you know what? It's about thinking on camera. If you can really think on camera when you're really playing a character, then you've got it. And the best actors do that, because the camera is that eye that looks at you inquisitively, saying, "What have you got for me?" And you got to be thinking. You got to be thinking, and it's hard to do. What you're doing usually, like you're doing a TV show, you don't have any time. You're actually saying words that sound like you're thinking. but you ain't.
Patrick, we went long on this one, and I think we could do a second and third episode.
For good cause. Yeah. Affective Memories, How Chance and the Theater Saved My Life. It's Laurence Luckinbill's autobiography. Go pick it up at your favorite bookseller. It's tremendous. They're great stories. And I haven't even finished the story about dinner, the fire in the apartment, and 21, so I can't wait to...
You better hold on to that book. It might not make it out with you.
It's autographed to me.
All right.
Sybok signed it himself. And actually, I love it, because what other movie would give you the line, "What does God need with a starship?"
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's true. Nothing.
And the look you give Shatner when he says it, it's priceless. Anyway, this has been a delight.
I didn't like that.
Been a delight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patrick.
Larry, it's been great to have you here. Thank you so much.
This is wonderful.
And Lucie, thank you for guest starring today. So on behalf of Randy, my great co-host, John McMullen, our producer, I'm Patrick Evans. We want to again give a shout out to the McCallum Theatre. It's actually really great to have a guest on who's performed on that stage. Larry, thank you for spending this much time with us.
Thank you, and I love this little bar here.
It's a lot of fun.
A little bar.
It is a little bar with big conversations. We will be back next time with another edition of Big Conversations Little Bar. I'm Patrick Evans. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Big Conversations Little Bar. Recorded on location at Skip Paige's Little Bar in Palm Desert, California, the center of the Coachella Valley Universe. And presented by the McCallum Theatre. Online at McCallumtheatre.org. This program is a production of the Mutual Broadcasting System. All episodes are available from BigConversationsLittleBar.com and most major podcast portals, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Spotify.